Hello guys, welcome to weekly outlook here on gold, the pound USD, the USDCAD, and of course the DXY. If you stick to the end of the video, you get a bonus for Euro USD. And let's go. Basically what you can see is like a formation that was formed via last week here on the DXY, an inverse head and shoulder pattern, and my anticipation is a possible continuation to the upside. If price really breaks this neckline, we might see price come all the way to 105, 105.50. All right, now why is that? Maybe before we continue to the downside. Other than that, if price breaks below 102, 103 here, if price breaks below 103 one more time, then we might anticipate price to come all the way to 102.50 and possibly at 101 regions. Okay, now why? If you look at the movement that we had a couple of weeks back towards the end of November, we've seen, if we pull a Fibonacci retracement tool from that region up to this point here, we'll get that possibly price might pull back to 50% retracement region here, and possibly 61.8 region here, and this is looking more like it. So I'm looking at a possible movement back into this point here of 61.8 regions here. If I take this off, so we might actually be looking at for price to break this neckline. Let me take this away for a bit. So I'm looking at something like this, price breaking this neckline, possibly a market open. So we're going to have something like a break of this region, retest. Okay, so price might come back to this region here before we continue to the downside. Okay, and so on. Now a possible reverse of what might play out is if price decides to come back, hold these regions of 104. If price holds these regions of 104, then we might see price come back and possibly break this region, so retest of 103 region, then we might see price continue to the downside. Okay, we might see price continue to the downside. So either we see price retest this region this week and start making plans to go to the downside, or get enough volatility to start actually coming back to break 102 regions. So this is that for pound USD. And before we dive in, I'm supposed to go like for gold, but let me start with USDCAD, pound USD, then I'll go back to gold. Now for DXY usually correlates a lot more with DXY. So if I'm anticipating DXY to create this upward movement, which is strong dollar, then we might actually see a strong USDCAD. Then we might see price actually create something more necessarily like we've seen this. This is 4 hours time frame note, so this is more like an inverse head and shoulder pattern here. So we might actually get like a break of price into this region, retest, come to these regions. I might call that like half of the movement from the initial break, and possibly touch this trend line one more time if possible, and then we can ride to the downside to retest 135 or 134.90 and probably below. All right, otherwise if price, what I'll be looking at for is if price comes back to break this region that it wicked out to, so we might see price to create something like this and then come back to these regions, break it, retest, and then we might see price continue to the downside, probably retesting 133 or 134 on the dot psychological level. So this is possible for the USDCAD if price is to continue to the downside. That is, if price holds off this region, we might get that move. Once you get that continuation to the downside from here, holding off 104 region, then USDCAD might still hold off this 136 region and we'll see price pull to the downside. But if it breaks this region this week, we might get a price retesting these regions here, same as price retesting these regions here on DXY. Likewise on pound USD, the reverse correlation. If you're anticipating price to actually break into this region to go to the upside, then USDCAD, pound USD might break below these regions here and create this possible continuation to the downside towards these regions to 123. All right, now what I'm looking at here is a possibility that pound USD might want to hold off this region of 125 psychological level. This is a very strong psychological level, hence the possibility of price continuing to the upside, breaking above, retest and break, come back to the test 127 or possibly break it and continue to 128 is there. So if we're going to get a pull, a continuation of pound USD to the upside here, then the likelihood of DXY holding off this region is high, which means we might actually just get let me add one more thing. We might actually get price really continue from here to break this trend line and so on and so forth. to the downside. I don't want to cloud it, but it's possible this might just play out. Okay, all right. So pound USD over here, I can see this weeks towards the end of last week. So possibilities that we might actually continue to the upside, creating these higher highs and higher lows. Possibly break 127, which was the high it made last week, or last 2 weeks, which one? Then we might break it, retest, and then get to 128, 128.50 possibly. Okay. Other than that, two ways. Just pound USD is very simple on this one. But if we can actually get more confluence, we can see that price might hold off like a little kind of imperfect trend line. I call it not imperfect because it might work, it looks good, but touch 1, touch 2, touch 3. If price breaks it, retest this region, retest upward trend line, we might get price to the downside. Otherwise, it might hold off. We have a multiple confluence now that price might hold off this region. Strong support, strong upward trend line, and candlestick pattern, which are wicks here. So possibility price will go up is high, which means here on DXY we also have wicks, possibility for price to hold off this region. I might be looking at DXY continuing to the downside, invalidating this head and shoulder pattern we might see here. But if the neckline breaks, then yes, we might see price come all the way to this region. Don't eliminate the factor that we might actually have a weak out or a fake out price coming into this region, then close back within this region. Take note of that as well. And lastly, for gold movement is really, I don't even get it. This open to of price to gold last week on Monday is scary. 21.50. So we had a price break up to get up the way to these regions here. So my initial anticipation is price to come back to this region and reject, and will continue to the upside. But contrary to that, we start seeing price creating something like head and shoulder and double top here to continue to the downside. And for the week, this is what I'm looking out for. All right, let me just say this trend line, draw it perfectly, touch 2, touch 3 here. We see price have broken the upward trend line. Okay. All right, so it's possible we might just get at market open, pull back to this region, continuation to this region, possible break and continuation to these regions of 1944. If price really wants to go to the downside, or let me close that because I can see a very strong level here at 1985. So we might actually just stop at 18. Let me take this one off and draw that back again. So for the week, we might just get price pull back, continue and come back to 1985, retest 1985 before we might continue to the upside. Okay, Otherwise, for the week, if price plays around these regions and then comes back to break above 2030 or 2040, then there's a possibility we might retest this regions of 2077, which was the all-time high previously, and probably above. So let's see how price will play out this week. I hope you guys will back a lot of pips this week, and I'll see you guys for weekly recap during the weekends, and enjoy. Ciao.